Devin and I in a room together and we just start rambling on about gear without even thinking about doing a show. It is ridiculous. But I think it's time for the show, Devin, because we're live. So in time. 5, 4, 3, 2. Hello and welcome back to another exciting episode of DSLR Film NOOB Podcast. Devin joins me today to discuss all kinds of stuff. We've got some lenses, we've got LED lights, and some really interesting uses of ND filters in the flange. But we'll talk about that in a minute. First, Devin, what have you been up to, my friend?
Last week, I haven't had one day off. This Sunday is probably my first day off. Been working at 2 different mornings and nights, so... and then on top of that, I've been backlogging client work as well. So even though today is my day off, it's been a day of shooting review videos as well as a lot of client work. So
when you're not actually doing work, you're doing work to help me out.
Exactly, and it's and I actually got, I don't know what to call it, mildly sick one day in the middle of the week too. I got a little bit of a cold for a couple of days and then still working 16, 17-hour days. So it was kind of rough there in the middle, but I finally got some sleep since this is my day off, quote unquote. So I'm in good spirits.
I've been shooting on the coast, doing a couple of coffee chain interview things. Long story, not going to talk about that too much, but I mashed my head into something and got vertigo for 2 days straight. Like I couldn't stand up and I was falling over anytime I tried to stand up. So I guess moral of the story is don't mash your head and make sure you have health insurance because, man, I had to go through some physical therapy for a day and they did a whole bunch of weird neck things and head rotations and all that.
That's what people come here for advice like that. DSLR Film Noob, don't get concussions. That's your advice for the day.
All right, I think that's enough talking about medical conditions. Let's go on to the... What? There we go.
The news.
Time for the news. First of all, I shouldn't place things behind me to try and activate them, but it seemed like a good spot at the time. Moving on to the news, we've got some interesting stuff here. The first one actually comes here from Devin, and this is an interesting approach to the adapters for mounting. You're getting a swivel top. This is the Tinder 210 friction mount, and it basically gives you, looks like 360-degree motion with either a cold shoe, a rail mount, or a light stand mount adapter. The price is pretty spendy. It's $169 to $228 depending on the type you choose. Devin, what do you think about this? You're the one who put this in the show notes.
I think everything about this, without having used one firsthand, of course, but I think everything about this is fantastic except for the price. I keep looking for solutions. I know I may be in the minority of somebody who likes rigging their camera and who likes using an EVF. I know a lot of people just kind of like to have a monitor like a 5-inch from DP and stuff like that. But for me, I'm trying to use EVFs. I'm in lots of situations where the camera's close to me. I'm in tight quarters, and EVF just works a lot for certain projects and for my workflow. And so I'm always looking for a way because the one thing that I don't know, people forget or they don't understand is that all the monitors on your camera are nice because you can move them, and then after you move them, they just stay, and you don't have to lock a bolt and unlock a bolt to get the job done. There's been a few solutions for this, like from Eldercron, that's how you pronounce it, and a few other brands that kind of allow for friction movement, but they're always cumbersome. They're always kind of hard to put together and stuff like that. And there's parts that I like about parts that I don't. So I've actually been out shopping for a better EVF solution for when I'm fully shoulder mounting with a follow focus and everything else. When I'm properly building up a kind of a big rig, which I don't do for a lot of shoots, but on some shoots it constitutes having most of the gadgets on the camera. And so in this situation, this looks like a pretty decent way because it's so flexible and how it's mounted that it could be a good way where I'm I just need to focus on a mounting point and then stick this guy on here and then I'm done. And at first when I was looking at it, I was kind of but rotating a monitor from its base as opposed to from its middle makes it kind of weird because it moves so far forward and backwards in space. But I then thought about, you know what, probably mount this sideways, and then that would allow me to twist the monitor kind of like you would a normal EVF, because a lot of monitors and EVFs have, you know, a side quarter 20 for mounting purposes. So that would kind of help to keep this entire thing really small, really compact. And then with all the mounting options, I figured there would be an easy way to put it together. I'm not sold on it yet. I haven't pulled the trigger on buying it because I don't like that price.
Almost $200 for this thing is
I know,
pretty spendy.
I know, but it's one of those where, like, no one is really hitting this a home run. Like, I've tried a few solutions and I haven't fell in love with any of them, and I'm wondering if maybe this is the one.
What about the old-fashioned solution of a swivel ball head? I mean,
no, that works, and that's what I'm saying. This is, and I feel like that's why no one's paying attention to building a solution for this, because there's so few people who care about it. If when you're in the field and the camera's on your shoulder, 2 hands free to unlock something, move the monitor, and lock it again. I mean, most people who've already tried know that friction mounts or friction arms are really bad ideas for monitor mounts, because as you jostle around, they'll just unscrew themselves.
Well, you just got to make sure you put them on the right side or the left side, depending on which way your monitor is going. This, though, I see the same issue. If you have this at any kind of angle, and for those of you listening to this in audio, it basically is able to pitch forward and backwards and twist side to side, and it's a roll bar attached to a yoke, and so the yoke, it allows it to pitch forward and backward while it spins.
Actually, a really
on
good
that yoke.
description.
And it's an interesting design, but the issue I see here is that it's a thumb screw to go onto the bottom of your monitor or EVF. So you're going to run into the same issue that you run into with any other sort of swivel screw mount, is that if you end up angling your monitor in the wrong direction, it'll want to spin free. There's no locking system.
I don't believe that.
Where's the locking system? Do you see it?
I don't believe that. The reason why, because I'm a man of physics, and the reason why I think that it's less of an issue is because whenever I put a screw mount in the bottom of a monitor, even like a big heavy 7-inch monitor or something like that, when I screw that in tightly, that almost never comes loose. The part that comes loose is the other end of the friction arm, and that's because since the weight is so far away from the point that's being screwed in, it has a large amount of leverage. So whatever motion is happening to that big mass that's hanging off of this arm gets multiplied by the time it gets down to its mounting point. So that's why I look at something like this, where all the mounting points are close together and it's not something hanging out on a limb, that I go, okay, maybe this could actually like hold things together and not fall apart on me. It's not something that I would say like would survive being screwed in if you throw it in the back of a truck and you drive for an hour, because, you know, as you bounce up and down on the road, you'll find a lot of things tend to loosen themselves up. But for actually being out and shooting, it's one of those where I go, everything's close enough and the mass is close enough to all of these screw joints that I figure it won't be nearly as much of an issue as an actual friction arm would be. But, you know, real world testing would tell you the results of that.
As simple as the design is on this thing, I would say give it 6 months and we're going to see clones on eBay for like $15 to $20. This does not look like it has a lot of very complicated.
It doesn't look terribly complicated,
to it,
and
so.
It's not like it's an adjustable. Well, the friction, I imagine, is adjustable in the sense that it looks like it has very, very tiny hex screws that you could probably use to increase the friction that it naturally has in a locked position. It does have locking too, which is kind of cool. So it's like it has friction to move it, and then if for some reason you never want it to move, it has locking screws around it, which is a nice feature to add. But like, you know, it's not like a tripod head or anything fancy like that that has something that you can adjust on the fly. So
what about the rosette mounting systems? I've seen a number of those out there where they have the gnarled end that only fits into certain spots. I really like those too.
Those work fantastic, and those are some of the solutions I've been looking at for my EVF, but that still requires unscrewing something with one hand while you hold something with another hand.
Yeah, you got to get it permanently where you want it, and then don't touch it after that.
It's not a bad solution. If you're like, you know what, I'm never going to like pull my camera forward and like flip the monitor and like shoot low with it or something like that, if you're kind of like permanently in one position with the camera, then those rosettes work perfectly because they aren't going to move. And most of them too, high quality stuff, you know, you can lift the camera by rosettes, and a lot of that stuff is going to hold up. But In this case, I'm trying to find something in between, and I've got my eye on it, but I'm not sure I'm going to pull the trigger because you're right. I can't justify the price when it doesn't seem like there's a lot going into it. Because we're not talking fluid bearings or anything fancy like that. We're probably just talking metal on metal friction, like, really basic stuff. So.
Now, another expensive item on the list in the news here, and something I'm actually kind of excited about. This is a new device from Kipon. It's an adapter that allows you to basically attach, and this is something we've seen before, by the way, an EF adapter. So it's an EF lens adapted to a Sony body E-mount. So you have that flange distance, and it's got the electronic controls. So the same story as usual. But the difference here is that it has a slot to drop in an ND filter in between that space. Now with that, you can adjust the ND filter using a cute little nub, or you can change it by just simply taking out the ND and putting in a different ND, depending on your approach. And this gives you that ability inside of the space between the adapter and the lens for a price of about $400, looks like, a little bit over $400 for this setup. Now, a lot of cameras out there offer this in the higher end, but you don't get this very often in a DSLR or any of that form factor. You don't have variable NDs built in. With this,